Hello, everyone. My name is Todd Wall. Welcome to Communication Makeover, where we look at the intentional approach of breaking down your communication so that you can get your business and your life to the place that you're looking for. We all need assistance in that communication process. You know, the biggest illusion in communication is the illusion that it actually occurred. And so we need to take an intentional approach to how we engage with business, how we seek to connect with the people around us. And so it's for those of us who are wanting to learn that process. That's what this show is for. We're for you, that person that knows, hey, you know what? My message isn't always landing. I'm trying, and that's the person we're looking for on this show. And so today we've got a very nice treat. I've got Kate O'Sullivan from Coach Select, and we're going to talk about the coaching process a little bit. We're going to talk about the approach that you need to take in order to find that connection you're looking for. Here's the problem we're looking at today primarily is, in your business, you've got customers, you've got team members, you've got investors, you've got board members. Depending on the size of that company and the situation you're in requires situational communication. And you have to communicate differently to different types of people. Some people you need to be direct. Some people you need to be curious. Some people, it just requires what is the outcome you're looking for. Therefore, what kind of communication do I actually need to bring? Let me bring her on now. Kate, thank you so much for being on the show with us today. You primarily work with leaders of businesses of all size, and you have a group of coaches underneath you. So I'm so intrigued to have this conversation with you. So welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so talk to me a little bit, Kate, because you deal with all sorts of different coaches. Where have you seen this dilemma of situational communication? What are some of the different ways where you've seen this become a barrier or really a gateway that opens things up?
Yeah, I think the short answer is I've seen it everywhere. I think it really, this is relevant for everybody because all of us are working with more than one person, right? If you're, like you mentioned, there's board members, you might have people who report to you, who you're managing, you have peers, you have managing up to multiple partners. So most roles will require the skill set, and everybody has their own unique code of the way they like working and how they want things done, but they don't tell you what that is. So you really only know when you're violating somebody else's unspoken rule of how they want you to communicate, and then you know that things aren't going poorly. But that doesn't really give the answer of what to do.
That is good clarity. Let's camp on that just for a second. How do you know when this thing is not working? When you know you've got to do something different? How do you know, like you said, you violated somebody's code? That sounds like a violation. How do you know?
I feel like sometimes you get very clear cues, like you say something in a meeting or you communicate and you just get the not the reaction you're hoping for. And sometimes the communication is a lack of communication. So I'll hear things like, "Oh, I've been emailing this person for weeks and I haven't gotten a response." I mean, that's a failure of communication if you keep reaching out to someone and you're not getting anything back. So that's when you should stop and say, "Does this person like email? Is this really the best way to get through to them?" They're probably ignoring you for a reason, but we have to dig into what is that reason, and then how can I be more effective at communicating with them?
I mean, you're so hopeful on the beginning of a sales call or a meeting of any sort, like, oh, they loved me. Oh, they love, but then it's just crickets. And so where's the situation where you've just seen this thing just go completely off the rails and go completely wrong? I mean, I really want to talk about why we need to get this fixed.
So I had a client a couple years ago, and I still think about him all the time, where he had been at this organization for 15 years. He knew everybody loved him. And then he got a new boss who came in from the outside. And they had this recurring project. It was actually a water operations company. So super interesting, like municipal water for an entire city. And they had this one thing that they do every year that is just maintenance. It's required. It happens. And so he went through their normal process, put together the business case, presents it to his boss, thinking this is just a complete check the box exercise because they have to do this every year. And his boss said no. And so he came to our coaching session. He was like, I have no idea what to do. Like, I laid out the business case. It's so obvious. And he said no. And I think the reason he's saying no is because it wasn't his idea. And I don't know how to navigate this because I need to get him to say yes, but he's just said no, and I'm stuck.
Just stuck. And I think that's the key thing. When the communication breaks down, you just get stuck. And
Yeah.
or you run into, like you said, the leader who's like, it wasn't my idea, therefore it's a ridiculous idea. And
Yeah.
you uncover these biases of different types. So talk to me about the opposite. When a situation in your coaching, or one of your team coaching someone that you've heard about, where it's just like there was that stuck place that turned into just the most beautiful field of communication and connection.
Yeah, we just had a really huge victory, and I'm actually even happier because I was not the coach on this, but it was like a wonderful outcome where we had a client working in financial services and he was really good at the quantitative side of his job and at bringing in business. But he was internally not communicating effectively with people, especially with his peers. And so basically the feedback was everybody thought he was a little rougher on the edges, he was a little bit of a jerk sometimes, and his stance was, I'm bringing in the business, so who cares? Well, who cares was he wasn't going to make partner unless he fixed it. So we had a coaching engagement for him. He worked with this coach for 6 months, and she really broke down for him, like, here's how people are perceiving you. When you communicate this way over email, this is how people hear it. This is how they feel about you. And she was able to help him through a lot of modifications that seemed small, but had a huge impact to how people perceived him. And then he just got promoted to partner in this review cycle, which we're all so excited about. It was such a great, outcome for him.
It highlights really the power of real coaching, which is the magic of awareness and discovery. And it was interesting. You said it was a 6 month process. It wasn't an overnight. It wasn't just saying, "Hey, people think you're a complete jerk," and that fixed the problem all of a sudden. This awareness process, it does take a while. Talk to me a little bit about how you've seen this play out and this stuckness to a breakthrough, but getting through that awareness and discovery stage.
I mean, I'll use him as an example. I think for him, it was, I'm aware that people think this about me, but he didn't think it was important. And I think we see that a lot in coaching. It's like, yeah, but that's just kind of, that's how I am, as opposed to, okay, but that being that way, being the way that you have been, even if it got you to this level, is not going to get you to the next level. So let's talk about what you need to do to close that gap between where you are now and where you want to be. And then I think the other piece of the untuck is getting it into specifics, right? It's like it takes no more time to write, "Hey, hope you had a good weekend." And then what you're asking for really is not a huge behavior modification, but had a huge impact on how people feel about him.
Yeah, absolutely. I and so oftentimes in a makeover, in a communication, it is just a little thing.
Mhm.
Leverage is a small thing that just it enables a tip to take place. And so it's interesting you bring that out because it's not always I need to start from scratch. No, we just need to do things just a little bit differently than maybe we did before. Talk to me a little bit more about the problem, and because in our next segment, I want to really jump into how you've been able to help people break that down and some different methodologies. Because this coaching process is extremely powerful. I mean, we see it on this show, and where we're actually doing live coaching with people, and you just see that aha moment. And so, do you talk to me a little bit about where you see that aha, where that's just that breakthrough, and you see the lights turn on?
Yeah, well, I'll go back to my client at the water company because he was a perfect example of this. So again, his problem was new boss won't do anything unless he thinks it was his idea. And what my client brought to our coaching session was, I've now identified this is what's happening. He won't do anything unless he thinks it was his idea. But I've got this thing and I need him to say yes. And I don't know how to convince him that it was his idea. And he said, I don't have that skill set of helping somebody think that it was their idea when it wasn't. But I knew that we talked a lot about his kids and that he had 3 small children. And my first job was actually teaching second grade. So I was pretty familiar with, okay, I know how children operate. They have to think something is their idea. They have to be in control. So I said, okay, if your 8-year-old wanted to do something or you wanted them to do something and you needed them to think it was their idea, how would you do it? And he sat there for a second and he was like, "Yeah, I know exactly how I would do that." I said, "Okay, can you do that to your boss? And well, you're going to use the same approach?" And he was like, "Yep, I 100% know how to do it." I was like, "See, you convinced yourself you didn't have that skill set, but I know you're doing it every single day." And once he realized, he's like, "It's the same?" I said, "It's the same." He's like, "Then I got it. I'm good."
I love that. And that really is the power of this. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel or come up with some new Pythagorean theorem, whatever a Pythagorean theorem actually is, but
Mhm.
we're not having to come up with that. Oftentimes, they know how to do the behavior. It's just out of context. Our very first episode of the show, we the Deirdre was coaching someone about getting on stage and being comfortable in front of a really large audience. And she said, when I go and I ride my horses, I'm able to relax and I can calmly adjust to the situation. And she goes, oh, you see the pause as all the dots were connecting. So, Kate, I want you to stick with me, and in the next episode, we're going to start getting into the mechanism that really creates this breakthrough. So, will you stick with me?
Of course.
All right, everybody, stick with us after the break because we want to really dive into this coaching process because I've bet my entire life on it. That's where the magic is. The makeover is in the little intentional things that you do. Let's jump into it right after this break. Stick with us.